today's webinar. My name is Lesley Strachan and I'm one of two Learning and Development Managers working within the SimVenture team. I've worked in higher education, pioneering various enhanced technologies for over a decade now. As a Learning and Teaching Fellow and Senior Fellow of the Higher Education Academy, I'm passionate about how we can support lecturers and enhance student learning. Before starting my academic career, I spent many years in the commercial sector, both in the UK and overseas, and have managed several micro-enterprises. At this point, I'd also like to introduce my co-presenter, Mike Ashwell. Mike.
Thank you, Lesley. I've also worked in higher education for over 10 years, and 7 years of that was actually using SimVenture products to teach students of a wide range of ages and backgrounds, ranging from 14-year-olds university visitors to MBA students. Prior to joining higher education, I was a management accountant and a financial systems implementer.
Fabulous, thanks Mike. So, SimVenture Evolution is made by Venture Simulations, which is a leading provider of innovative business simulation technology that teaches core business principles, business entrepreneurship and commercial awareness, employability and personal development skills, all in an authentic way to both academic and commercial organisations. So, what are we going to cover today? Well, firstly, we're going to have an overview of what the simulation looked like. On the screen in front of you, you'll see 4 major areas of the business, which we're going to review. We're also going to have a look at the different types of activities that you can do in the simulation. What you're looking at now is one of them, which is called a scenario driving lesson, which is about a company taking over a business which has been running for 2 years. We also have an entrepreneurship startup simulation. So what we also have here on this screen that you see is various teaching and pedagogic methods, which we're going to talk to you about, including assessments, the type of activity formats that you might want to use, and some case studies that you might want to use. And finally, we're going to have a look at the control tower, which is your area where you can look at what the students are doing, you can have a look at all the students, you can send them messages, and it's your private area where you can engage with the students. Okay, Mike, would you like to have a discussion about how our audience is going to plan their simulation?
Yes, we've had a range of help that we can provide to any implementers of the software. So we can help them whether they're actually running a particular module, say an undergraduate or postgraduate module, whether they're wanting to run a specific event, whether they want to impress and engage their visitors on an open day, or in particular where they're wanting to progress their students through to final employment and therefore want to work with them on employability or enterprise activities.
That's great. And I think what might be really cool at this point in the chat room for our attendees, if you could just jot down in the chat what your plans are for how you might want to use a simulation like this, and then we'll come back to that in a few moments. So today's objectives of this webinar is to develop a sound basic knowledge of how it works, look at the administrative functions which we call the control tower, where you can organise and manage learning, and look at how you can support each other, your colleagues, in getting the best out of evolution. Okay, so for those of you who know our previous product, SimVenture Classic, this was launched in 2006. It's been highly successful and is used in over 40 countries and has won 4 awards to date. It was developed after extensive consultation with clients, which led to the development of SimVenture Evolution, which is our latest online product. SimVenture Evolution is used worldwide in educational environments like schools, colleges and universities, as well as commercial organisations. And the software is continually being updated, literally on a day-by-day basis, to meet the needs of an increasingly diverse global client base. So there are two products. And as we move forward, SimVenture Classic and SimVenture Evolution are fundamentally different, but reassuringly similar. Evolution builds on all the best elements of Classic, yet also retains the central principles of authentic, engaging, and sustainable learning, which is now online. SimVenture Evolution, being online, can be used on multiple platforms, including PC, laptop, and tablet, and is accessed remotely through cloud technology. As a teaching tool, you can have a structured approach, allowing a single scenario to be used in 4 formats, plus enhanced formats with support documents to make implementation and training easy for you. There are also enhanced admin features, including a separate admin portal called the Control Tower, where you as a tutor can organise, monitor, communicate, and modify in real time with users who are playing the simulation. And in terms of a learning solution, Evolution has a more structured core skills program to get the user from beginner to learner readiness. This means that users who are not familiar with the language of business can get up to speed before they engage with the simulation. And there's independent learning. Here there's improved support to allow for the assignment of activities for independent work. There's also an integrated messaging system to allow for remote administrator support for users. In terms of assessment, you can have formative assessment as we go on, which can be verbal or written, and also summative assessment, where you'd actually mark the student's work, not in the simulation, but external to it. And finally, we have our competitive elements, which are highly engaging and highly challenging. Users can compete against each other or in teams on one location or wherever there is a Wi-Fi connection.
Thank you, Lesley. Just a couple of questions that you've actually almost completely answered anyway, but I'll cover them. We've had a question from Zoe, who said that she uses it for university competitions, both internal to the university and involving other parties. And obviously that would be a very good application, a very worthwhile application for Evolution. George asked initially about MBA students. As I said in my introduction, it's certainly a very useful tool for working with MBA students. And in addition to general business learning, Evolution enables you to focus on particular aspects of business, such as marketing or finance, depending on the specific requirements of the MBA course.
Yes, there's some very, very good points being raised there. So as we go on, please do feel free to keep putting some comments and questions in the chat room, and Mike and I will be picking those up and answering them whenever we can. So we're going to look now at how Evolution works. It is an activity-based learning simulation, so your learners are engaged all the time. Experiential learning is all about activity. And an activity can be described in many ways. When teaching, I describe an activity in terms of a year group of students, a module, the name of a training course, or a competition, for example. So an activity is created in the control tower by an administrator, someone like you, or we might do that for you. And it's selected by, we select one of the scenarios we've created and which are stored on the server. If you look on the left-hand side of the slide, we've listed 3 example scenarios: a startup, and a 2-year business, and a 3-year business. The most common scenario is the 2-year business, and this is a company that's been in operation for 2 years. So that's our most common one. These can be seen as starting points. It's a bicycle manufacturing company, which can be at different stages of their life cycle and can contain different market conditions. And they obviously have different problems that they have to overcome. You can choose which type of business to allocate to your learners. So a basic scenario can be used in a range of ways, which we call formats. So once a format is chosen and participants are added, an activity is created and added to the dashboard of each competitor. So here are all our competitors, here's our activity, and here's the simulation where everyone's allocated an activity. We do all this work for you, but eventually we would train this to be done by yourselves. So when the time comes to do the activity, the participants just simply load the activity from their dashboard and they start interacting. So it may be that you're at the front of the classroom and you want to interact with all your students in an IT suite or on their laptops or tablets or something similar. Or you might want to have them in groups, for example, because it's so versatile being online. There are different ways in which you can do it. You don't have to lead from the front. So you can have students working together, you can have them engaged on different computers, or in some instances, you can take yourself right outside of the classroom, wherever you are in the world, you can still see what they're doing, but they're actually engaged with simulation without your help. You're just watching from wherever you are. So wherever there is a Wi-Fi signal, the students and the tutors or trainers can work anywhere in the world. So what happens is that you will observe what the students are doing. You can interact with them within the simulation, which means you don't have to have your email box inundated by students. You can alter what they're doing. If they're doing very well, we could put in some different market conditions. And you can also assess them formatively within the game by adding comments into their journal. So the only thing that you would need to consider with remote working is different time frames across the globe.
And that actually answers, sorry, Lesley, that answers Zoe's question very well about the ability of the software to run an external international competition. And that illustration shows very well how that could be accomplished. Thank you.
Yes, we've done a lot of inter-country games within the UK, in Boston, Massachusetts, with interns in South Africa, and also across Europe as well. So it does work very well in that way. So introducing SimVenture Evolution, we're now going to actually show you how the simulation works. So I'm going to flip over now to show you a video, which is just a couple of minutes long.
SimVenture Evolution is a business simulation game that allows you to run a bicycle manufacturing company, managing multiple decisions in all the key areas of business. The simulation runs online via a web browser, wherever you have an internet connection and whatever operating system you're using. Your user account is accessed via a login screen, taking you directly to your personal dashboard where you can choose to open any of the available activities that have been set up for you by your tutor. The virtual company comprises 4 departments from which you can manage resources to ensure that enough time and money is available to complete the tasks that you plan in each of the departments. Decisions are taken on a quarterly basis by accessing the Change Strategy buttons located within each of the business areas. Once you've made your decisions for the coming quarter, they're submitted to be processed by the simulation, and the business progresses to the next quarter for a new set of decisions to be made. This process can be repeated, allowing the company to be run for up to 10 simulated years. Scenarios present startup or established businesses in a range of different starting points and contexts. In this version, the scenario is a relatively new company which is just beginning to make sales in its chosen target segment. Plenty of support information is included to help you understand the issues and make the best decisions to suit your targets and aims for the company. There are no right or wrong answers, and because of the interrelated nature of the business, you'll constantly need to weigh up the pros and cons of each decision you make. A range of tools are included to help you run your simulated business. The History tool gathers together all the data you need to be able to monitor and analyse performance. Other tools allow you to communicate with your tutors and take notes as you advance through the quarters. You can run the virtual company on your own or as part of a team to identify market opportunities, create your product offer, and fight for market share against competitors generated by the simulation.
Okay, and welcome back. I'm just going to share my screen with you. Again, I hope you enjoyed that video. Now is looking at how the process to get to market evolves, which is quite an interesting process. And we all recommend that the students and the tutors follow this process for a number of reasons, because it actually works. And you can dip into this at any point, but we always recommend, for example, that the students start with research. So that might be market research, it might be customer research, looking at the whole marketplace and any feedback the company's getting on its particular products and services that it's actually selling. Then we go on to the process of designing a product, where you take into consideration all the market research that you've gathered in order to either design a new product or to recreate and design a different product. So that's your market research is actually informing that decision. So then you go around and look at, having designed your product, you look at the selling points, you'd go into production, you'd think about your promotions and your sales channels. You then go into manufacturing, and then, as always, you would go into the cycle of research again. But what happens a lot of the time is a lot of our students come into this process and try to do all of these things when maybe they should be just starting off with one particular area in terms of the research that they need to do. So that's what we recommend to do. You can give this diagram to students if you want to, or you can keep it as a surprise for later on. We don't mind. So here is a typical scenario. This is the page that users will see. It's the basic information which they need to get started. Across the top here, you'll see various different tabs. This one is the briefing, which is this overview. And there's various targets that you can go into, from shareholder satisfaction to turnover to sales, and then some data that sits behind that. But the simulation is very rich and very deep. There is absolutely shed loads of Excel spreadsheets and lots more information, which the students will be expected to learn. So you can flip this classroom and just tell them to go into the simulation and find out more as they go along. So as we said before, we need to start with research. There are lots of case studies on the website, which we'll point you to later once you've bought the simulation, which are written specifically for SimVenture Evolution and use the same language, and they work from level 3 right through to level 7. And they can be static case studies. They're just one-pagers where the students just have to go away and analyse and evaluate something, right through to boardroom. And I think you've got something on boardroom as well, don't you, Mike?
Yes, if we have a look at the next slide, please, Lesley, we can see the different range of case studies that are available, and I can talk through those. The first type is the static case study, which is where a particular current business situation is shown to the students, and they can analyse that. They might need to have a look at a number of screens within the software, but they won't need to run the software as such. It's just a static activity. As they develop further, they can look at a dynamic case study. This is where they will be asked to look at a situation and then predict the outcomes if the software is run. compare their predictions with the actual outcomes, and analyse the reasons for differences. Moving on further, they might be involved in an interactive case study, much more like a real-life situation, where they will analyse the situation, and rather than just predicting, they will actually make decisions, implement those decisions, and then see what the outcomes are and how they relate to their expected results. Further to that, we've developed some very interesting boardroom scenarios based on a typical boardroom situation. So we provide guidance for the tutor and students as to how a boardroom might be conducted, with the appropriate behaviours, the appropriate decision-making processes, and then give the students what is in effect a more extensive interactive case study, whether it might be about an overall business situation or simply a marketing problem or a cash flow problem, and they identify the best way to take the business forward and conduct a lot of very useful research and learning along the way. And finally, in that group of case studies, we can run a parallel competition where people are actually competing to run the business and run it as effectively, profitably as they can.
I think that's really interesting, because what's happened more recently with the University in Birmingham is they've taken a lot of our boardroom case studies and actually used them as a whole assessment. So, we've designed all of these to be used by tutors and trainers, so you can literally pick and choose what you want to use and go on and use those materials without actually having to invent anything yourself.
That's actually a good point, Lesley, because we've had a question in from Hannah, who said that, well, how do we conduct assessment within Evolution? Is it simply the group that makes the most profit or ends up with the most cash or the strongest balance sheet? And certainly that's one measure that you can use for assessment, but we will give you lots of suggestions for other assessment processes, which is the effectiveness of their group work, their overall team results. But very often we like to focus on the individual reflection of the student, how they have coped with the situation, what role they played in the team, what influenced the various decisions, whether they fully agreed with the decisions, and what their business learning is from the outcome. So lots of different ways in which assessment can be conducted.
I think that's a really good point, which leads us on very nicely to our next slide of support materials. The Learning and Development team have written over 41-page case studies and teaching lesson plans specifically for SimVenture Evolution to make your job that much easier. The support materials are also provided for each of the formats to save time and communicating tasks to users. These can be included as documents within the simulation, but they're also going to be made available in editable Word format so that you can easily co-brand and modify them for your own students. Interestingly also, because Mike and I are also academics, is that we've tried to tie in the case studies to relevant theoretical models. So, for example, the second case study here in promotions, it's very simple SWOT analysis. Over onto the right here, where we're looking at employability skills. Over here, we've got business model canvas. You could also think about blue ocean strategies, red ocean strategies, or any strategic models such as Porter. And then further along, there's lots of different marketing models that you could use, organization management, whatever you wanted to do. We've also married all the case studies and the material against QAA subject benchmark statements for business and marketing and against the CBI employability skills. We're now working with professional bodies to try and embed their courses or some of their modules within the simulation. And I think, Mike, you've been working on the apprenticeship levy as well, haven't you, over here in the UK?
Yes, and that is an area where Evolution can greatly support learning towards different elements of apprenticeship, particularly the corporate manager areas, but also other support areas for apprenticeship, and it can be used as the background to a course or supporting material for a program. So it has tremendous use in that area. We've just had another question through from Graham, who particularly wants to use a simulation to look at performance management and management reporting. And certainly Evolution does support that. We have a number of case studies which are written around KPIs, key performance indicators, and also covering the balanced scorecard. A very good feature that the software has is the potential to download all the financial data as a set of CSV files, and those can be again put into Excel, and students can use those to create their own performance measures.
Yes, I think that's really valuable, and we have used that and are using it again next week with some master's students in order for them to predict and analyse their strategic plans. So being able to download all this material is really good for the students. And so in terms of whether you want to test your learners or not, you don't have to, but you could do. You could give them formative, informal feedback in a classroom scenario, or you could make the feedback summative in terms of a strategic plan. It can be very often tied into a report or a presentation within an existing module, but it could also sit alongside a module or be completely independent. And what we've found is that if you've got a clear idea and you work with us in terms of what you want to achieve by using the simulation, we can make it work within a module or as a standalone activity. So it's a very flexible tool in terms of how you can use it. Or you could use it as a combination and give them a basic competency test, or not as you want to, really. So we're now going to show you around the really cool area of the control tower. Now, the control tower is the tutors area where it allows you to observe all the activities, the games that are being played, all the users, which could be your students or your interns or commercial people, or you could have whole groups that you're looking at. And the really nice thing is that you can send and receive messages within the simulation which don't clog up your inbox with your emails. You can also monitor engagement, because retention and engagement are really key areas in higher education at the moment. So you can actually tell who's working and who isn't, which is really good. I enjoy it a lot. So here is the control tower. Here you can see a screen which is called Swansea. There's an awful lot of games going on over there at the moment, and you can see all the various different groups, and on the right hand side are all the latest messages that are coming into the game and out of the game to the students, which is a really nice thing to do. This screen also shows you different activities. For example, this was a company in South Africa where we had 18 groups of managers who were playing against each other, so you can see who they are. And indeed, you can go and view all their games as a tutor. I was viewing their games from the UK, but they were actually playing in South Africa. So I could tell what they were doing and who was engaging, who was winning, and all that sort of thing. So I call these my latte and muffin moments, because it's quite a nice way of teaching. Here on the left hand side you can see all the users. We have decided to use the names user 1, user 2, user 3 to get over data protection of students' names in particular. So we marry up on an Excel spreadsheet the students' names. We know exactly who they are, but we have anonymized them for data protection purposes. So again, you can go into each individual user's account and see what they're up to. So in terms of creating the activities in the control tower, we have an activity which might be the startup, the 2-year or the 3-year business. You would select a scenario with a little bit of help from us. Decide whether you want individuals to be able to use the simulation and or have the students work in groups. You can have both. So let's just take this one group. You may decide to use a format or not. It's entirely up to you. We've just chosen a boardroom for the purposes of this activity. Then we go ahead and create the games and create the teams for you within the simulations. Now, before we did talk about trying to understand what you actually want from the simulation before you start. And for us to help you set that up, it's important to consider how you see this looking so that we can then decide whether you want to allow rewinds, for example. This is an excellent way of students being able to make decisions and then rewind those decisions if they don't feel like it's the right one. We can increase some cash, we can change the market conditions. For example, competitors might change their product and their price, and then our learners would have to adjust to that. So it's really important that we work together from the outset to decide what it is you want to get from the simulation. Then we go ahead and make the activity live for you. Now, in the meantime, probably about a week or two prior to running the simulation, we would ask you for a CSV file with the first name, second name, and email address of the people that you want to be involved with the simulation. These are then all anonymized into user 1, user 2. So anyone looking in the game would not be able to identify who each player actually was, which is a good thing. So the CSV file then, we import that into the simulation for you. And so here would be all your students' names and email addresses so that you can go in and view them all. And then if you wanted to put them into groups, that's a simple process as well. You tell us which group they want to go into. So we're having 4 in group 1 here, and we've got 4 in group 2 here, and they go into the simulation and described as group 1, group 2. Interestingly, if you want the students to change groups, that's perfectly okay too. We can train you how to move students from one group to the other.
Just a question or two questions actually that have come in around that area. Lesley, first one is from James, who's asked about the maximum number in a cohort or course. And I know that we have experience of running several hundred at one time in learners in a program. That's correct, isn't it?
It is, yes.
So no practical limit there. The other question from David was around the actual group formation and what was the ideal number in a group. As Lesley said, students, if chosen by the coordinator, can work individually or they can work in groups. We think that a maximum of around 5 is normally a good sort of limit, because you can have a managing director and then perhaps 4 students looking after the individual disciplines within the business. But certainly no problem to have any number, and again, that's totally within the control of the coordinator.
Yes, I think that's a really good point. Thank you for those questions. In terms of the logistics of learning here, you probably need to decide. I know I keep on about designing the learning as you're going along, but it really is important to decide whether you want to guide the learning, and this may be that you want to guide it for a couple of weeks to get the students orientated with what's going on, or it might be with master's students, for example, that you want them to be completely independent. So at that point in time, you would take yourself out of the classroom once you'd shown them what they were supposed to be doing. Or you could have a combination of both. It really doesn't matter, but it does come back to organising the logistics of learning right from the beginning so that you get the best out of it, and so do your students. So let's have a brief summary of the learning content here. So to begin with, I think it's really, really important to look at what you want to look at in terms of the learning. So do you want your learners to have a broad concept which covers multiple business areas, particularly useful for students who don't have a good awareness of business? Or like Mike and I do with our students, we look at specific areas of business. My specialism is marketing, and Mike, yours
is in finance, yes, and you can handle
yeah.
that by simply not making changes in other areas of the business. So you can perhaps hold other areas constant and change some of the marketing plans and promotions and so on, and see what the effects are, or do a similar activity within finance or any of the others. So it's very easy to focus on specific areas.
Yeah, and I think the other really good point is, because I teach marketing, they don't tend to understand the impact of their decisions and their spending on the rest of the business. So it's quite good to get out of your silo and actually understand what the rest of the business is doing, which might have some impact on the decisions that you're actually going to make. So the third one along is you might want to look at problems, issues, and dilemmas within the business. You might want to solve complex situations involving multiple areas of the business. There might be issues, for example, with getting up to speed in the market, or seeing what the interrelationships between the various different aspects of the business, or the business is losing money, and how do they do that? So you can actually give them a single task to actually go away and solve. Or you might want to look at various different business phases, from startup through to 2, 3, 4, 5-year-old businesses. You can run this simulation for up to 10 years and look at various different business life cycles. Or you may want to look at the employability skills of the learners and look at their enterprise skills and competencies, look at how innovative they can be, and look at entrepreneurship as a whole separate area as well. So as a kind of a roundup of the sort of teaching space, if you like, the best advice I can give anyone thinking of doing this is to have a plan. What learning needs to take place? Is it in specific business areas? Is it general principles or commercial awareness? Or indeed with some of the commercial organisations that we work with, is looking how to train junior managers to progress to the next level? Or do you want to focus on employability or personal or interpersonal development skills? And again, what level of challenge is required? If you've got foundation students at level 3, you'll have a different type of challenge to the ones that you'll give at level 7. There may be less hand-holding at level 7 than at level 3. And also what type of organisation you need to put in place. Do you want completely independent or guided learning, or a combination of both? Are you going to do it face-to-face or remote? Is it going to be competitive? And is it going to be assessed or not? So there's all those kind of things to consider. Mike, is there anything else coming through in the chat at the moment?
Just a question from Tarek, who was very impressed with the facilities offered by the control tower and the amount of vision that he could have over the activities that the students were doing. A little bit worried about the actual detail of handling it. And I think I could give two answers to him. Firstly is that in terms of the initial setup of the control tower and the other activities, the SimVenture team will be very pleased to provide support as that's taking place. But secondly, there's a lot of online help. So each of the control tower screens will have online help, which will actually guide the user through the activities that need to be completed.
I think that's a really good idea. And of course, once you've watched this webinar, there will be more questions that you'd probably like to ask us. So still keep putting them in the chat room, because they will come through to us as email questions. So that's really good. There's another point about pricing, I think. Yeah, Sue was asking about pricing. So we thought we'd throw this into the mix to help things along. So accounts start from about £25. depending obviously on the usage. Now, if we have a look on this screen here, you can buy accounts for 1 month, 3 months, 6 months, or 12 months, but you can also have annual accounts on a site license where the number of accounts that you can have are up to a maximum of £2,500, 2,500 annual accounts. So that works really very well if you've got large numbers of students within an institution who are actually using SimVenture. So that's how that works, but obviously do talk to us if you want more information about pricing. What I'd also advise everyone to do, obviously if you'd like to, is sign up for a free trial. So we put in a hyperlink here to a free trial. Also in the poll here, I'm just opening a poll in terms of, would you like an evaluation copy of SimVenture Evolution? Click yes. I'm going to start the poll. So if you'd like an evolution copy to have a look at it, we're very happy to do that. Also, any further questions, either contact me, Lesley Strachan, or Mike at simventure.co.uk. We'd be very happy to answer any questions that you might have. And I think that's probably more, just rounding up with the contact details. There's our phone number and our email address. And thank you very much for joining Mike and I today. It's been a real pleasure for us to show you around this very powerful software. Today, you've only had just a little glimpse of the power of this software, and we'd be more than happy to go through the software in greater detail with you through the Evolution accounts. Mike, is there anything else that you would like to add at this point?
No, I'd just like to say thank you very much for everybody's attention, and I look forward to speaking to them in the future.
That's fantastic. Thank you. This session is now ending. Thank you for joining us.